My brother-in-law ruined my career. My sister knows. My parents know. My entire family knows. We just don't talk about it because that's what you do, apparently. You just don't talk about it. I want to start by telling you what kind of person I was at work because I think it matters. I was the person who stayed late without being asked, who trained the new hires even when it wasn't my job, who remembered everyone's birthdays, covered shifts, and never, not once in 11 years, called in sick when I wasn't. My manager called me the load-bearing wall of the department. I thought that was a compliment. I didn't understand yet that load-bearing walls are the last thing anyone notices until they're gone. I'm going to tell you what happened to me. I'm going to be as precise as I can. And at the end, I need you to sit with the fact that there was no resolution, no karma, no moment where the truth came out and everything was set right. This is just what happened. My name isn't important. What's important is that I worked in mid-level operations management at a logistics firm. I won't name it. 11 years. Started as a coordinator straight out of college, worked my way up to regional operations lead. I had a team of 9 people. I had a parking space with my name on it, which sounds small but felt like everything when you're the kid who grew up sharing a bedroom. My sister, I'll call her Priya, got married 4 years ago. Big wedding. Beautiful, actually. I gave a speech that made half the room cry. I meant every word. Her husband, I'll call him Marcus, worked in corporate strategy. Broad term. Could mean almost anything. In Marcus's case, it meant he was very good at being in rooms where decisions were made and making sure those decisions somehow benefited Marcus. I didn't know that yet. At the wedding, I just thought he was charming. A little too comfortable talking to everyone. The kind of guy who laughs at his own jokes a half second before he finishes telling them. But Priya adored him, and that was enough for me. 8 months after the wedding, my company announced a major restructuring. New regional leadership, new strategic direction, and a new director of corporate integration, a role that hadn't existed before. The name they announced in the company-wide email was Marcus. I sat at my desk and read that email 4 times. I want to be precise about my reaction because I've thought about it a lot since. I wasn't immediately worried. I actually genuinely thought that this might be fine. We were in completely different departments. He was senior leadership, I was operations. Our paths wouldn't cross much. And besides, he was family. Surely that made things safer, not more complicated. I texted Priya. Did you know about this? She sent back 3 celebration emojis and a heart. She knew. The first thing I noticed was the meetings. As director of corporate integration, Marcus had a mandate to assess operational efficiency across all regional departments, which meant he could sit in on any meeting he wanted, and he wanted to sit in on mine. At first it was fine. He'd observe, take notes, nod, professional. I even felt a small, embarrassing flicker of pride like, look at me, competent enough for the new director to study. Then the notes started becoming questions. Then the questions started becoming challenges. Then the challenges started happening not in the meetings, but after. In emails I was CC'd on but not addressed in. In conversations between Marcus and my direct manager that I heard about secondhand. Small things. Has anyone looked at whether the Tuesday routing system is actually the most efficient approach? An approach I had built and refined over 3 years. I'm wondering if the team structure in regional ops is optimized for where the company wants to go. A team I had hired and trained. Nothing accusatory. Nothing you could point at and say, there, that's it, that's the attack. Just erosion. I went to HR after month 3. I want to be clear about what I brought with me. I had printed 11 emails. I had a log I'd been keeping, dates, times, what was said, who was present. I had a statement from one of my team members, entirely voluntary, describing a conversation Marcus had with her where he'd implied the department was operating on borrowed time. The HR lead, I'll call her Susan, listened to everything. She was professional. She took my documents. She said she would look into the matter and follow up within 10 business days. I walked out feeling like maybe the system worked. She followed up in 14 business days, via email, 3 sentences. It said the matter had been reviewed, that no policy violations had been identified, and that if I had further concerns, I should discuss them with my direct manager. My direct manager had been in 2 of the 11 emails I submitted. Here is the part that I think about the most, more than the HR meeting, more than what came later. 3 weeks after the HR response, my parents had their anniversary dinner. The whole family. My parents, me and my wife, Priya, and Marcus. Marcus sat directly across from me. He ordered the same wine he always orders. He asked my dad about his garden. He helped my mother with her coat when she got cold. He laughed at my father's terrible jokes. And at one point, just once, he looked at me across the table while my father was talking and gave me this small, calm smile. Not a smirk, not a threat, just a smile. Like we were sharing a private joke, like we both knew something the rest of the table didn't. We did. Months 4 through 7 were a masterclass in what I can only describe as structural undermining. My team was quietly redistributed. Not all at once, that would have been noticeable. One person moved to a cross-functional project. Another suddenly had a dual reporting line. My most senior coordinator was offered a promotion into a different department, a real promotion, better pay, and she took it because why wouldn't she? She didn't know what I was starting to understand. My parking space was temporarily reassigned during a building renovation that I'm not sure ever actually happened. My one-on-ones with my manager went from weekly to bi-weekly, then monthly. When I raised this, I was told the manager was navigating a high-demand period. I went back to HR. Different document, 23 entries this time, a timeline, a diagram actually. I drew out the org chart before and after, marking every change. I brought my own copy, kept one at home. Emailed one to my personal address. Susan listened again, same professional expression. Same 3-sentence email, 12 business days later. My wife, I'll call her Diane, sat me down in month 8 and said something I didn't want to hear. She said, "He's not trying to get you fired, he's trying to make you quit." I told her she was being dramatic. She put her hand on the table between us and said, very calmly, "If you get fired, there's a paper trail and a reason and potentially a lawsuit. If you quit, he gets everything he wants and it costs him nothing. He's making it unbearable on purpose. He's waiting you out." I didn't sleep that night. Because I knew she was right. And I knew I wasn't going to quit. And I knew, in the way you know things before you can prove them, that this meant it was going to get worse before it ended. My annual performance review in year 11 was the first time in a decade I didn't receive an exceeds expectations rating. I received meets expectations in 4 categories and developing in 2. The developing categories were team leadership and strategic alignment. Team leadership, of a team that had been systematically reassigned away from me. Strategic alignment, to a strategy I hadn't been included in developing. I asked my manager who had input into the review. He said it was a collaborative process involving multiple stakeholders. I asked if Marcus was one of the stakeholders. Long pause. He said all director-level staff had been invited to provide input on regional operations reviews. I nodded. I thanked him for his time. I went back to my desk. I sent an email to my personal address with the date, the time, and everything that had just been said. Then I called a lawyer. The lawyer was good, direct. She listened to everything, all of it, the emails, the log, the review, the HR non-responses, and then she said something that rearranged how I understood my entire situation. She said, "What you're describing is real. It's also almost impossible to prove in a way that results in meaningful action. What he's done, if he's done it deliberately, is stay just inside the lines at every step. The question isn't whether you're right. The question is whether you can afford to be right. She told me what a legal process would cost. Time, money, energy. She told me the most likely outcomes. She told me that companies settle these things quietly, and the settlement comes with a non-disclosure agreement, and I would never be able to talk about it publicly. I asked her what she would do. She looked at me and said, I'd be very, very sure about what I was willing to lose. Month 14, a Tuesday. I was called into a meeting with my manager and an HR representative I hadn't seen before. They told me my role was being eliminated as part of an operational restructuring. They said it wasn't a reflection of my performance. They gave me a severance package, fair, actually, generous even. They gave me a document to sign. The document included a non-disparagement clause. Marcus was not in the room. I asked if I could have time to review the document. They gave me a week. I spent 3 days reading it, talking to my lawyer, and then another 4 days just sitting with it, with everything. 11 years, Employee of the Year, the load-bearing wall. I signed it. I'm not going to tell you whether that was the right decision. I'm still not sure. What I will tell you is that I was walked to the elevator by a security guard, while 3 of my former team members watched through the glass partition of a meeting room. One of them, the one who'd been with me the longest, raised her hand in a small wave. I waved back. The elevator doors closed. Marcus was promoted the following Monday. I found out from LinkedIn. Priya called me that week. Not about that. About my mother's birthday plans. We talked for 20 minutes about restaurant options and whether Dad's back was good enough for a long drive. She didn't mention Marcus's promotion. I didn't either. My mother's birthday dinner was 3 weeks later. Nice place, private room. My parents, me and Diane, Priya and Marcus. Marcus ordered the same wine he always orders. He helped my mother with her coat. He laughed at my father's jokes. He sat next to me this time. At one point he turned and asked how the job search was going. Genuine concern in his voice. Said he'd be happy to put me in touch with some people in his network. I said thank you. Diane's hand found mine under the table. My father made a toast to family. Everyone raised their glass. I raised mine. I've thought a lot about what I would want people to take from this. I don't have a lesson. I don't have a moral. What I have is this. Some people are very good at operating just inside the lines. Some institutions are designed, whether intentionally or not, to protect people who operate that way. And some families have an unspoken agreement that keeping the peace is worth more than telling the truth. I don't know if Marcus planned this from the beginning. I don't know if Priya knew. I've turned both of those questions over so many times that the edges are worn smooth. I'm looking for work. Diane is steady. My father's garden is doing well. Marcus just got a LinkedIn endorsement from my former manager. I saw it this morning. Thanks for listening. Now for the comments. Comment 1 at Quiet Observer Neil, 14 hours ago the way he said, I raised mine at the end. That's not a man who made peace with it. That's a man who learned to survive it. There's a difference and it's devastating. Comment 2 at Throwaway 9 8472618 hours ago I work in HR. I've been Susan. I'm not proud of it. The number of times I've written that exact 3-sentence email because my hands were tied by people above me who'd already decided the outcome before the complaint landed on my desk. This video made me feel sick. In a necessary way. At user 482,910, replied 7 hours ago the fact that you said hands were tied tells me everything. Someone tied them. That's the part nobody wants to name. Comment 3 at driveway moments 11 hours ago, Diane's hand found mine under the table. I had to pause the video. I don't know why that one got me more than anything else. Maybe because the whole story is about systems failing him and institutions failing him and family failing him, and then there's just a hand. Under a table. That's it. That's the whole thing. At Talks from Thinnet replied 10 hours ago, you just described why I had to tell this story. Comment 4 at Mark Usengier Lal, 6 hours ago, not me watching this while my brother-in-law sits in the living room. Not me forwarding this to nobody because I signed something too. Not me at all. At Perpetually Tired 404, replied 5 hours ago, bro said, forwarding this to nobody. I felt that in my chest. At Mark Usengier, Lal replied 5 hours ago, we don't talk about it. Comment 5 at former loyal employee 2 hours ago, the load-bearing wall is the last thing anyone notices until it's gone. I've been in the workforce for 23 years. I've watched this happen to good people more times than I can count, and I've never heard it described so accurately. Companies don't lose people like op. They discard them, and then spend years wondering why nobody has any loyalty anymore. At Gen Z Want Stay Late replied 1 hour ago, and then post a LinkedIn article about quiet quitting, like they didn't create the conditions. At former loyal employee replied 58 minutes ago, I'm 54 years old, and that comment just made me want to quit my job and start a podcast.